Hello and welcome to HorsePlayer Happy Hour. I'm your host, Peter Thomas Fornatal, back with you for the next 90 minutes or so. Not in any of my usual locations. This is a little bit different today. Last year, we did a lot of these shows from the Walt and Whitman Brewing Company. Today, we're changing it up. We're over at the Brentwood in Saratoga. We do our live shows here on Saturday mornings at 10:30. If you're in town, come join us. We will be getting to the Whitman beer a little bit later in the show as soon as I finish this delicious dram of Maker's Mark. Taking this happy hour thing seriously today, something I haven't been able to do too many of these weeks in HorsePlayer Happy Hour. What is this? It's a live stream. It is a contest. It's about to start. HorsePlayers.com is the place to go. You sign up, you pay your $20, and you have a chance to win your way into Saturday's qualifier for the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge. Plus, you automatically join our interconnected series of contests that we have added $20,000 to the pot for in the form of 2 Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge seats. We'll talk about that and how that whole deal works a little bit later in the show. But now we have back from an undisclosed location in New England, no longer on the West Coast. He's no longer driving around in a car. He's no longer moving luggage from one rental to another. But you know this guy. You've seen him on television. You have heard him on his own eponymous podcast. He'll be staying here at the Brentwood a little bit later in the summer. He is TV's Matt Bernier. Matt, what's up?
Safe to say this is a much more settled area to be broadcasting from. It's not quite so choppy, and hopefully nobody got motion sick last week. Things should be a little bit smoother here this week. Looking forward to Pete. I don't know about you. I feel like these races in this contest today, I didn't think they were cupcakes. I thought you had a lot of logical horses, but I didn't think there were any real standouts.
You can definitely find prices in the 3 races we're going to talk about on this show. It's a Saratoga Six Pack. You've still got 3 minutes to get involved. And again, it's $20 to play. So quick cap, play all the 4s, do something, but get involved. If you're like, no, PTF, I just can't do that, that's okay. We've got a bunch more of these. They happen on Thursdays. Next week, I think we'll get Del Mar back in the mix since they're running on Thursday. They're not running tonight, obviously, but even just think about it as a charitable donation. We have 2 beneficiaries. We had Thoroughbred Aftercare Day here at Saratoga yesterday, and boy, was that fun seeing different charities get to present every stake. I got to be in the winner's circle for the race the Thoroughbred Retirement Foundation essentially sponsored. And if you saw those 2 little kids dancing in the winner's circle on the Fox broadcast after, you probably know who they are. That's the next generation of our podcast. That was Austin and Perrin. And oh my goodness, Matt, you've never seen 2 kids so excited about being on television. Austin even said, "Now I know what my dad feels like." It was pretty cool. It was pretty cool to see. It was a great day out, and I think one of the easiest and funnest ways to support Thoroughbred Aftercare is by playing in these contests, and that money goes to the aforementioned TRF and also the Thoroughbred Aftercare Alliance, who do that critical work of accrediting the various organizations involved in aftercare. On the podcast I did earlier this week with the great Joe Applebaum, former Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge winner, horseman, racetrack exec, really on the horseman side. You're going to want to listen to that and hear all the more about it. But I'm hoping other tracks pick up on this. I think NYRA have done a good job setting a template for a way to create awareness and hopefully raise some money for these horses that do so much for us.
Yeah, I mean, look, we've talked about this, and I think we are we're not tooting our own horns because there are many people that do similar things, but I think we all recognize the importance of making sure that the equine athletes are taken care of just as much as the human athletes or the human connections in general in horse racing are. So, I sound like a broken record, but without the horses, there is no horse racing. So we need to make sure that when their job on the track is come to a conclusion, they have an opportunity to go and flourish in either a second career, or they're just going to go and kind of bide their time and enjoy their retirement years, as I think many of us hope to do at some point in our lives.
Maybe at some point. It seems a long way away.
It doesn't seem anytime soon. But
with 1 minute to post here, Matt, we should talk about this race. I think we've tipped our hands that while I'm sure we both think that number 4, Expand the Map, this Dark Angel firster is very live, that this might be a case where the word is out and there's no semblance of value at 2 to 5 with this training. I have a feeling the horse is the real deal, but we've seen former Triple Crown winners managed to get beat at first asking, and with a bunch of prices signed on against this one, where is your eye drawn?
Well, to your point, it feels like Chad every summer has at least one of these horses where the word is out and they're just going to be a monster. Maybe that's the case with this filly. I wanted to go to the outside, though, with the 10 Pizza Bianca for Christophe Clement and Bobby Flay. This is a horse, Rosario with the mount, I don't think should go overlooked. For what it's worth, Clement past 2 years, 2-year-old first-time starters and turf routes. 6 for 25, 12 in the money with almost a $4 ROI. When Rosario's aboard, the numbers improved to 4 for 10, 6 in the money with a 6.18 ROI. He's been known to have horses ready to go 2 turns first asking. It sounds like this one has worked with the uncoupled stablemate Bala Bell down toward the inside, so you're going to get a much better price on that one. But I do think if someone is going to beat this Chad filly, I think it might be the 10 Pizza Bianca.
We have a few comments coming in already. Steve Benaviste's heard the word about the hype on this Chad Brown trainee. Howard notices that they're betting the 4 like the next Lady Eli. That sounds about right. It's hard to argue with that assessment. And Chris Couples points out that there is plenty of value if you can beat this one, and gives a Chad Brown stat here as well. Very quickly, I'll just give my idea on the number 3, Hail 2. This horse has some pedigree. You look at this. You look at this female family where you've got 5 winners from the 6 babies from the dam, including Sadler's Joy, and then you've got Kitten's Joy on the top. And I also noticed that when Matt Vagvolgi did his statistical analysis for the Saratoga meet, one of the stats that stood out to him was how well the Albertrani barn does in races at a mile on the grass or over. Now, that typically hasn't been with 2-year-olds, but how many 2-year-olds had pedigrees like this? So I'm very, very interested in number 3, Hail 2. And I will also back up a little bit. Why not play the horse you mentioned, Matt, and also the 4 over my 3, and have a chance to use a little bit of an exacta as place bet and hopefully get things off to a good start. There is the horse in question, and she looks lovely walking into the starting gate. Lots of muscle on her for an Albertrani first-time starter.
Not only is her sister Sadler's Joy, Lunaire, who's about a $250,000 earner, is a sibling. Dynapasser, who's almost a $250,000 earner, is a sibling. So she has every right to be a good one. For me, it's not even so much the Albertrani 2-year-old first-time starter kind of situation. It's in a funny way. This mile on the 16th first out of the box, I think that might be sharp. I feel like she may actually want to go even longer than that, out to 1.25 miles. So I won't be surprised if she puts in a good bid here. And I'm not talking anyone off at 11-1. I would say fire away. You've got the pedigree backing it up. I wonder if she'll flash a little bit late at the end, have a big gallop out, and then you try. Probably won't happen at Saratoga, but maybe you get back to Belmont. Try to stretch out to 1.25 miles, something like that.
Yeah, I love that idea. Showing surprising speed, though, which I like the sound of. Chad Brown runner, as Chad Brown runners often are, covered up towards the back, and that's the 6. Looks like going to make a fairly easy lead here in this race at Saratoga. That's Hope Over Fear, a Bill Mott first-time starter by Cupid, who I think is a first-year sire and a City's dam. So maybe the speed not entirely unexpected. Got a chance to look at number 4, Expand the Map, going into the gate as well. Looks fast, and we'll see if that speed can be put to good use here. Has that double handful and is kind of tanking along, and looks to have every chance, if good enough, as they cover that first quarter mile in 24:88. But I got to tell you, Matt, I love where I am here on the 3.
Lovely trip right here. I mean, I don't think you could have dreamed for a trip like this, and I don't mean that in a mean way. It feels like this is the candy of all candy trips. Now, if maybe she's not ready today, but I mean, from just a setup standpoint, this is a lovely, lovely position.
She should be able to fire a shot from there, and we'll see if she can keep going. Looks like the 6 might have my Hail 2 on the stretch, but look who's making this big wide move on the outside.
Get her, Joelle.
Yeah, we'll see if the rocket fuel is
yellow silks
is in effect, and you're following leader here and making a decent run as well. I think if the afterburners hit on Expand the Map, the rest are running for second. Boy, your horse is making a nice run, Matt. Let's see.
Come on, Joelle.
Going to be 10-4 or 4-10. if Expand the Map can re-engage. No answer for the late challenge of your horse there, Matt. And that was a very nice debut. Pizza Bianca, Christophe Clement. He didn't always have the reputation as a first out trainer. I mean, I think you think of a guy who does well with French imports and long on the turf. You think of him as they'll need a race for whatever reason. And I'd love to ask him at some point. I feel like something changed in his program, I don't know, 5 to 7 years ago, and they hit the ground running. This was a big move. I don't think this was a no-show by Expand the Map. This horse threw down a big challenge and just had no answers for Pizza Bianca late. A nice winner for Bobby Flay, new Saratoga resident Bobby Flay, who will probably be eating something a little bit fancier than white pizza tonight.
If our friend Michael Baychak is in this contest, I can guarantee he had this horse because it became a pet angle of ours. We actually did a little reunion earlier this morning on Ron Flatter's racing podcast with the HorsePlayers show. And I just remember way back when Mike bringing up, and it's always talked about it. And we would send just sort of these cryptic tweets to one another, me, him, and Lee Davis, just naming the race and actually not naming the horse. And everybody knew what we were talking about. And it's because it's Clement, 2-year-old, out of the box, going 2 turns on grass. They don't always win, but I think especially you need to take note when Joel Rosario is aboard. That's typically a bit of a tip. If Joel's got the mount first out, maybe they don't win, but they're well meant.
That was a great pick. And, we didn't spend too much time talking about the pedigree, but it's awfully nice getting you don't see all that many Galileo Dam babies, and then Fastnet Rock on the sire side. Doesn't surprise at all that this one would have the pedigree to succeed at first asking. And I wouldn't be in a hurry to give up on Expand the Map necessarily. It sometimes takes a run for a horse to show their best. And Chad Brown, I find it very hard to predict with the first time starters. Some of them they hit the ground and they're just explosive and they do crazy things, but others have taken a minute to get into form. How do you feel about this performance for Expand the Map in terms of going forward?
Well, I think I guess it depends on what your impression going into it may have been about the Clement filly. To me, to your point, what you had initially said, I think they both ran. I thought this was a perfectly fine debut for both of them. And she just happened to find one that ended up getting the job done. Look, maybe Pizza Bianca is actually a pretty good little filly. Again, you brought up the pedigree. The dam was a half sister to an Epsom Derby winner. It's not like there was nothing there to really understand that this one might actually have some talent. Just because she's not undefeated for Chad, which I know it feels like this time of year we just come to expect from the cream of his crop. But just because she didn't get the job done today, I don't think that's an indictment on her. I think she's the kind of filly that no reason that she won't break her maiden next out. She'll probably bet just as heavily. And I think she would take a step forward. I'll be curious to see what kind of figure we get from this race. But if I had to guess, I think it'll be pretty reasonable for 2-year-old fillies on the grass.
It looked like okay form to me in terms of you look at the blood that came running down the line, and you had already made the built-in excuse for Hale too. It was an easy trip, and I would have wanted to see some finish, but the hands she's in, I'm probably going to be inclined to give one more chance, especially if a price, and maybe like you said, if the next time out we're looking at a mile and an eighth. I think that there's a chance we're going to look back at this race and you're going to see. You'd expect that you'd see several winners coming out of it. You know what I mean?
I think Hale 2 fits that bill. Hope over fear for a Mott horse to break as sharply as that one did. Again, I understand his numbers over the past few years have really improved as far as the first-time starters are concerned, but Mott is still not a trainer who's just going to get him cranked just to have him cranked. No. I would expect for her to break as sharply as she did, to me, is a positive about perhaps what her overall capabilities are. So I would think going forward, I could see her running well. I could see Hale 2 running well. I'd be curious to go back and watch the tape again. Bala Bell, I don't really know what her situation was. I thought for the most part she had a decent position, maybe just didn't kick. But I think this could be, to your point, maybe this ends up being a little bit more of a keyer race than we thought of. And you know what? I'm trying to think, what would be the 2-year-old stakes race, the With Anticipation?
That's the boys' race, and then it's the PG Johnson is the girls' race, right?
I wouldn't be surprised if Chad just ran this filly right back in that race as a maiden.
Probably. Yeah,
You know,
probably.
because why bother burning a shot? You know that she's every bit as good as the winner was. And I think with a start under her belt, there's no reason she doesn't take a step forward. So I initially was thinking, no, she'll be, 1-2 in her next start, trying to break her maiden. I bet they run her right into that stakes race.
I remember that. Was it Analyze It, a Pletcher horse? We've seen that movie before with the 2-year-olds where the early season maiden they don't win, but they come right back in the stake and they end up doing very well. So it's just a question of how the calendar plays out and what the long-term goal is. But I mean, if he's super confident and the goal is Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf, I think you're right. The next logical spot would be to just come back in the stake, and then from a horse player point of view, you're gonna get a better price than that 1-2. We've got our let's do the leaderboard first. We have some comments that are making me laugh, but a whole bunch of people have that first winner, including Howard Kravitz in the money family. John Bull III gets listed on top. Some other names that we recognize for BCBC winner Brad Anderson. Matt Miller is up there, another friend of the show. Chris Couples, who's one of the MVPs of our comments. A Navy man is up there. Edward Enborg, had the pleasure of interviewing him several years ago. Great to see his name on the leaderboard. Dennis Madsen with the 2. Oh, Peter Rotundo, he's got his name up there, double-barreled. And look at that. Michael Baychuk, as predicted, and possibly even more notable than Michael Baychuk, as predicted. Oh, look who's right above him.
I know.
David Browning, who has turned these HorsePlayer Happy Hour games into his own personal sandbox. Congrats to David for getting off to another good start as well this week. At some point, we should take a look, Craig, at that overall leaderboard as well. Something we're overdue to get a look at. Well, I can't toast my own winner, Matt, but I'll toast yours. I've got a Dick Murphy Light here from Whitman Brewing. I learned something very interesting today. I went over to pick up the 4-pack from Whitman Brewing, which is a fantastic spot right here in downtown Saratoga. If people want to go drinking and they like good stuff, I'll ask them a question. Are we looking for cocktails? We're looking for cocktails and a chance to have some conversation. Come to the Brentwood. If you're a beer aficionado, I send them over to Whitman Brewing. And another cool thing about Whitman Brewing, they've got the racing form for sale now, print versions. So if you're going for drinks after the races, you can pick up the next day's form. Or if it's your morning of, you get a breakfast sandwich and you can pick up a print version of the DRF. You'd actually be surprised for a place that in the day, every other store had the form, the physical form, not that easy to find. So keep Whitman Brewing on your list, whether you're looking for coffee, breakfast, or in the afternoon, that fun pizza that they have, and also some beer. Look at that. David Browning, 460 points. That's a score, folks. That's a very good score. Number. Yeah, that's a very good number. But keep in mind, if you're playing, you can play multiple entries in the same game and get more than one tour score. So he's far from out of the woods. Up to 8 scores can count. But here's the thing, it would be a big mistake to concede the tour title to David, and I wouldn't mush him by suggesting that, though I guess I kind of just did. Sorry, David. But there are 2 other ways. Anytime you play in these games, you can win a Breeders' Cup betting challenge seat. One is by finishing in the top 2. You finish in the top 2 any week, you're going to get into our playoffs. What are our playoffs? Well, at the end of the year, after our 20 weeks are over, we're going to have a contest for 80 players that gives away a Breeders' Cup betting challenge seat. And there's a couple of cool things about this. So you get into that tournament a couple of different ways. One, you finish in the top 2 any week. So you could come in the last week, you've never played in the tour, and you finish second, and you're drawn live to win 10,000 added value. I mean, I think that's pretty cool. The other thing, though, and the reason why you shouldn't just wait and try to lay up or whatever and do it that way, is that's only going to get us 40 of the seats in the finals. The other 40 are going to come from the top tour players who haven't qualified. So there's really every reason to play every week. And oh, by the way, you can just naturally qualify by finishing in the top 10% of our field today and get into the Saturday qualifier and win your way that way. So, I mean, you and I spent several hours this winter dreaming this up as we're, turning for home or at least passing the halfway point, I'm pretty pleased with the way it's turned out. And I know JK is as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, it's a format that lends itself to both parity but also consistency, if that makes any sense. I know they kind of contradict one another, but on a week in and week out basis, it's not as though you have one opportunity to get the job done and that's it. If you don't end up scoring well or you don't have a good sort of weekend, then that's a wrap. It doesn't work out that way. You can always come back the following week, but it also is, I think, a format that really rewards someone who not only continuously plays, but continuously shows and plays extremely well, like we've seen from David Browning. There's a reason that he has such a massive lead right now. But I think the other thing that is so encouraging to me about this, no matter what your score is right now and how many scores you have, let's say towards your 8 total, you still have the better part of 2.5 months ahead of you to try to all of a sudden improve those scores. So perhaps you're someone who has one real top heavy score and a couple little nibbles here and there, maybe 10 points at a time. There's nothing saying that you don't come through and rattle off a few 3rd and 4th place finishes and just rack up points and shoot up that leaderboard as well. So I think, again, not to toot our own horn, but I feel like this is at least I think it's a perfect storm where if you've got a good weekend or a good week rather, great. You're going to qualify for the postseason. If you continue to play well all season long, you're going to put yourself in a position to not even necessarily need to perform well in the postseason and get that $10,000 BCBC seat by winning the regular season. So, I'll pat myself on the back. Pat
it was good
as well. I think it's a good format.
Yeah, and it's a great point. I mean, I love to think of the person who finishes, whoever the 80th seat in our playoffs. That's a player who's going to have shown admirable consistency. So I don't think what you were saying before is contradictory. I just think we've threaded the needle. We've come up with something that can be a tournament for all seasons, and I'm excited. I'm excited to see how it all plays out.
Well, and to your point, this was we kind of went back and forth on 4 or 5 different layouts, and what would this look like? Perhaps what would be the one that would lend itself to the most sort of excitement and let's call it appointment playing as opposed to appointment viewing going forward, week in and week out, even throughout the summer, knowing that folks go on vacation and do this, that, and the other. And who knows? Maybe this is something that we have little tweaks into next year if we're lucky enough to do this again. But I think for the first time getting this thing off the ground with a more formatted layout as opposed to last year where it was very much just come as you are and have some fun. I think so far so good. I think it's been pretty good.
All right, we've got some good comments to get to. I'll just put out the call to everybody watching. These shows are all about the direct interaction with the fans. We rely on you. We want you to give us picks. We want you to ask us questions, whatever it is. Here we go. Mike Bachok.
I told you.
In the house. That's good stuff. There it is. And while Bachok's name is up there on the screen, we'll give another plug because it ties in to this whole cause of Thoroughbred Aftercare. August 11th, right here in Saratoga Springs, we're going to have our second Gumbo for the Horses event of the season. We have Mike Bachok bringing up Frank Brightson, whose name I butchered on the Steve Bick show yesterday. Sorry about that, Frank. Frank Brightson coming up from New Orleans to make gumbo. So we're literally bringing New Orleans to Saratoga, and tickets are available for this very special event. We're going to have beer. We're going to have gumbo. We're going to have a great old time. We're going to raise money for the horses, just like Kendrick Carmouche did the other night at Elena Principessa over on the other side of town. But this is going to be a ton of fun, August 11th. I invite you to take a look on the TRF website. I think you'll find it, trfinc.org/players. There should be a link right there where you can sign up. We're going to have to cap this because the interest is so high. So don't sleep on this. Go in now. Reserve your spot for Gumbo for the Horses. Bachok will be there. We can talk about Clement going long on the glass. We can do grass. We can do whatever you want. It's going to be a lot of fun. Okay, we've got a few questions to get to. Chris asked one about sources for European siblings and mentions that DRF's formulator only shows the info if they made a start in the UK. I'll give you 3 ways you can do it. Here's the easiest one. So this summer, DRF has David Aragona doing the write-ups. Now, Dan Illman used to do an unbelievable job on the 2-year-old baby write-ups. He's their main man in Maryland now. So I guess, they figure David Aragona, who's already doing the deep digging to try to figure out the morning lines and does such a good job at Saratoga, they have him doing the deep dives. He'll go and find a lot of those European siblings for you in these races. But if you want to do the work yourself, there's 2 websites. I hope my bosses over at AtTheRaces.com don't mind that I mentioned the other one. AtTheRaces.com is one great place to get that sibling information. But I will be honest, the first place I ever dug around for Euro pedigrees was over on RacingPost.com. So AtTheRaces.com gets preference, and I'm not just saying that, Matthew, but RacingPost.com would be another way to do it. Do you have another way of doing that type of digging?
No, so you brought up the first piece, whether it's Illman or someone like Aragona with their write-ups, and I don't mean to throw shade at anyone else, but I know those two from a pedigree standpoint specifically are going to do the deep dive that I would have done with the access to tools that I had at one time. And unfortunately, that's part of the deal. The Racing Form has another system, let's call it, it's kind of like Formulator, but Formulator on steroids. Like it's got anything.
DRF internal. We can call it
internal.
We can tell it what it is. DRF internal.
I used to have access to that, and
we'd be shot on site now if we tried to get that. Somebody would show up.
I got locked out of my account. It worked for the longest time, and then it stopped working. But
I don't want an angry Chuck Koulis showing up at my door wanting to beat me up.
So that was always my go-to, to be able to go through and find, family trees forever and a day and all sorts of different stuff. But the beauty, if you're not willing to, or you don't have the ability or time to go through and do the work, as you alluded to some of the sites, especially from over in Europe, if you get someone like an Illman or an Aragona doing the deep dive on the pedigree, and Mike Beer as well, but I know Beer is much more into the nuts and bolts as far as the figs and things like that go. I kind of lean on those folks at this time of year, knowing that I know that they're not doing the 50% or 65% of the work. They're doing the 110% of it. So that's where I lean this time of year for a meet like Saratoga. And
Dan is still doing videos on the 2-year-olds over at
Correct.
The DRF site, yes?
He and Nicole Russo, I believe, are still doing spa babies, and Dan has told me numerous times their videos go to the YouTube channel as opposed to try to find them on the website, because they're a little bit more difficult to find over there on the site. But if you go to the Racing Forms YouTube channel, you'll find all that stuff.
Potentially dangerous conversational tangent coming, talking about the way the DRF site gets laid out sometimes. But,
no, I'm not going.
The YouTube channel, however, that's a good way to go. And hey, I don't know why I'm not tooting my own horn here. Tugel and I, Sean Tugel from Gainesway Farm, and I are doing these baby talk shows. So we actually have one for Friday and for Saturday, where we're just doing a pod going over the 4 2-year-old races, and they're across the country. So we're talking Ellis Park, we're talking Gulfstream, we're talking Del Mar, and we're talking Saratoga. So some very good stuff as far as that goes. Tom chimed in, a Californian. He's curious what he thought of the gas prices out there.
Holy smokes.
And said he'd have a lot more money to wager. Were they a little bit lower?
Yeah, I know everyone's dealing with some higher gas prices right now at this time of year for a number of reasons. But out on the West Coast, that was a different ballgame, man. I think our gas here locally in Maine is like $3.15, $3.20, and out there, I think the last fill up I made was $4.65. So it's significantly more expensive. So I can understand why folks either have electric vehicles out there, or you have something that is some vehicle that is so incredible that you're willing to put premium gas into it. Your house can't be anything outrageous because it just would cost you, unless you're a quadruple millionaire 10 times over. But it was certainly a bit of an eye opener out there, Tom.
I just bought a new car this week, Matt, and we did decide to make the jump over to hybrid. We were hoping for a hybrid with a fully electric angle. Did I tell you this insane story? I don't think I've told the story on air.
About the car, the side swipe?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I wish it was a side swipe. It was some new driver. Everyone was fine. I have to start the story with that. Everyone was fine, but the car was parked And it's also such a great, I always say the thing to guests on the show, no good deed goes unpunished. This is a great version of that too. So Susan decides to bite the bullet on a Friday night and drive out to a friend's graduation party in New Jersey. So it's one of those things, if there was in a theoretical world where there was no traffic, it's 35 minutes, it's 2 hours. And she gets there and she parks on the side of the street. This is the night before the Belmont, and I'm at Peter Luger while all this is going on with my phone in the coat check, not hearing any of it, and then getting 62 texts after it's all over. I'm sure horse players can relate to that. So some new driver, and again, everybody was fine, but managed with her car parked, the old, cruddy Kia Soul that we bought to bring Perrin home from the hospital in. They ended up flipping their car and totaling ours.
Jeez.
At first, I thought it was like a wise guy win, because I was like, wait a second, the insurance company is going to give us $7,500 for this thing that maybe I could have sold for $3,000, maybe. Yeah. But it's such a bad time to buy cars that I've determined that it's whatever I gained, I've lost back. But anyway, the new car arriving this week. I don't know how we got on that tangent. I'm going to blame Tom.
That's where we are right now. We're looking at a second vehicle, and to your point, it's just the inventory for used vehicles is so low that we hadn't planned on it, but we've pivoted toward looking at brand new vehicles because the discrepancy is really kind of negligible in the big picture. If I'm going to buy a vehicle that's 5 years old or 4 years old and pay $3,000 or $4,000 less than what the brand new one is off the lot, I mean, it's a very unique time for a number of different things right now.
Chris was happy with our answer about the European pedigree question. James Ellerbeck chimes in with a nice comment. We'll shout you out, James. Thank you so much. We do the best that we can. John has another suggestion about pedigree stuff, mentioning that Timeform US shows all the offspring of the dam with the record as well. Good enough for him. I can totally deal with that. Oh, we're going down the car rabbit hole now.
We drink gas.
We'll put Chris's comment up there. The 20-inch Duramax diesel 1-ton 13 Camaro 1LE and 77 K5 Blazer. We drink gas for breakfast around here. I don't doubt it, Chris. That's pretty darn intense. Lagrange, is this Grant Lagrange looking into buying a horse? Not to race Saratoga, but just to ride around with these gas prices. Completely reasonable. Thank you again, James, for chiming in. If you're out there, come tell us where, even if you don't have a comment or question, just tell us where in the world you're watching from. Really looking forward to a chance to chat with everybody. And then we've got one from Howard. How big a threat can Forza d'Oro be going forward? I think he's super talented and can be a BC Classic contender. What are your thoughts about Forza d'Oro, Matt? I mean, it's been a while since he's been seen on the track. But I do see him on the work tab from back in July at Belmont, and the hands. Anytime you're a Belmont trainee, the idea of Belmont with a target, something we talk about all the time. Last seen when winning what was a pretty strong-looking at the time version of the Discovery at Aqueduct. Though I will note that nobody's come out of that race to win. That allowance race at Belmont last fall, though, did seem like it marked improvement. The Discovery seemed to come on from there. I mean, it's an interesting wise guy idea, and if you could get a crazy enough price somewhere civilized in the world, Howard, I wouldn't tell you were totally nuts on that last number that the horse ran. Fits well. With the big boys.
Not to interrupt, but he ran yesterday, and he ran giant yesterday.
Oh, I somehow missed this. This is what happens when you're recording 42 podcasts. So he's back and he looked good.
He's back and he looked fantastic. I tried to get a little bit cute, and I thought there was some signal in the way that they were betting American Dubai, who is a horse who's probably a notch below. They went overboard on highest honors for Chad. He was coming off of I thought a workman-like performance, but a good enough race at Belmont Park. He's sort of a mid-90 type from a buyer standpoint. And Forza d'Oro opened up very chilly on the board. He was about 3-1 from a 8-5 morning line or 7-5 morning line, somewhere thereabouts. They broke. He was rather forward. He was much more forward than I sort of anticipated. I figured maybe he would need one. I know usually they're a little bit keyed up off the bench, but he's not a horse that I typically think of as sort of a forward type. I think of a more mid-pack. He took over and looked really, really strong. I'm trying to find the Timeform US fig, but he earned a 100 buyer yesterday. And it looked like he was just getting the engine warmed up. Apparently, Bill Mott has already said the Jockey Club Gold Cup on Labor Day weekend is going to be the next start at 1.25 miles. And Howard, I mean, look, to my eye, he's got to run a little bit faster from a fig standpoint. But when you factor in, this was his first start in, let's call it 8 months. For a trainer like Mott, who has been on the record saying when this horse was 2, he thought he could be something pretty good. If you're not sold on any of the other older horses, and we'll find out, I think the Whitney's going to go a long way into kind of drawing the lines for what the older division looks like. We know the 3-year-olds, and I'm sure we'll talk about the Haskell and some of the other races as well. I thought he was really impressive yesterday. And if you get a forward move up into that mid-high sort of 105, 110-ish range, he absolutely has a chance to win the Classic.
I'll tell you another reason. There's 2 reasons I like the horse's ability to move forward off that run. One is the fact that the hands that he's in, Bill Mott, you almost need to expect improvement when it comes to the second race off the layoff. But how about that? That's where I take cold on the board and I look at it as a positive. Because if you're cold on the board, that means you're not cranked. You're not expected to do that well. So if you're still winning with a triple-digit figure and you have a bigger number to run back to, all of a sudden that's super duper exciting to me. So I was buying it before I was paying attention to what happened yesterday, and now I think it's quite a reasonable commentary coming across from Howard. We'll give
There's no time for him fig just yet, but the 100 buyer, I'm going to assume they're going to be kind of simpatico. So I'm going to think of a 120, 122 somewhere in that ballpark. And again, he looked like he was only getting stronger as the race continued, and that was at 1.125 miles off the bench. So look, if you're not sold on any of the older horses right now, and even if you are sold on the 3-year-olds, knowing some of the prices that are out there, if you can sink your teeth into something, I don't think I would take anything less than probably 30-1 right now. I don't know if you'll get that anywhere, but that would be my thought. 25, 30-1. I'm not going to talk you off.
We'll take a look at some prices internationally, but we'll give a quick shout out to Maggie from Lancaster, PA. And how sweet. Tanisha gives us a virtual hug. We like that. We like the good vibes. We like the virtual hugs and we appreciate the elbow cough too, Tanisha. That's also much appreciated with everything going on in the world. 2 minutes to race number 6, Matt. I think it's time to pivot and yap about that. Who did you come up with? In this spot? We've got a fairly heavy favorite in the number 3, but where are you going to go?
This is where I kind of fell in line with the public. Derry Nane, the 3, 6-5 right now on the tote. Most recently worked out. Now, granted, I don't love that we've got a pretty healthy gap in the work tab from July 1st to now. But the most recent work was with a horse called Sendai, I believe, or Senbei, however you want to pronounce that.
Who won the other day, right?
Correct. Was a first out winner for Clement's Barn on Sunday and earned a 72 buyer. If this horse can run something close to that, she's going to win. No one else in here is all that fast that's run so far. And, maybe somebody else is going to do something brilliant, but they're betting her like she's a good thing based on the workmate that she has kept in the past. I think she just kind of flatters that form. So nothing brilliant for me. I think the 3 is the horse to beat.
I like that angle when you're looking at who they work with, and a lot of trainers, they pair their horses with ones of similar ability. And if the one ran that figure, I think it's a reasonable assumption. For me, the evens is just a little bit of a bridge too far. I think Clement has been showing this club that he has in his bag off to great effect, and maybe this is a case where we can look a little bit outside and come up with something. I was interested in the 7 quick power nap a little bit. We've got some pedigree here on both sides for this one. Cantheros, turf sprinting with a strong female pedigree. I think this one's taking money too. 7-2 into the teeth of that even money favorite. That's super interesting to me. I'm gonna lean with the 7, and I will do my typical exacta as placed backup 3-7 bet as well. I thought the 10 was maybe worth shouting out, a little bit more of a contest type horse. Maybe this is a strong female family with 4 winners from 6 starters. The race the other day was okay, outran the odds at Monmouth. And I think it's not exactly an eye-catching form line, which I think is leading to I think you could even argue that 10-1 into the teeth of that even money favorite is a little bit bet on the 10 as well. So I'll mess around with the 10 as well as the 3 and the 7 in this spot as we're at post time at Saratoga. Let's see. Joe is reporting on what JK is doing on television. He's singling the 3. Never met a chalk he didn't like. That guy. I'm kidding.
Oh,
I'm not one of those
low
guys.
blow, and he's not even here to defend himself.
It's a gag. He's selective about when he gets into his favorites, and he gives out plenty of 8-1 shots. But I figured I'd do that, and then I'd go into full on get off my lawn mode and question what he wears on TV. What do you think?
Hey, do you have similar concerns, or maybe I just kind of go overboard with this sort of thing? I brought up that there hasn't been a published work anyway, for Derry Nane since July 1st. And I know it's only 3 weeks, but for a horse who has 5 published works, I mean, is that any kind of a concern, or are you just going to kind of look at it and say the money is in the right spot?
Here's how I would put it, Matt, and I'm very cynical, but I would say definitively based on the betting that the horse has worked and somehow it didn't get caught. If I saw that and the horse was cold on the board, it would be a big concern. But the money, to me, this is a case of money talks and missed workouts walk.
I get that. Totally makes sense. And I've fallen into a trap in the past, especially with older horses who, as opposed to having a just completely consistent work tab leading into their next start from their prior effort, there's we missed a work. We missed a week and a half, whatever it may be. And I'm to a fault with a lot of things. You know me with the lead changes and stupid stuff like that. But
I don't think it's stupid.
Well, but I feel like it has bit me from time to time. And the workout thing has certainly bit me in the past where, you know what? Okay, so it's not 4 or 5 consecutive works. It's a work, a missed one, and then 3 consecutive leading in. And I still look at it and I go, what happened? Why did we miss that? Who knows? Maybe it was weather related. Maybe it was something totally unforeseen. But it does stick with me, and it has led me astray sometimes. But it's just part of my MO. It's kind of how I look at things.
No, I think it's good because anything you're doing that not everybody is doing is liable to contribute to an edge. Grant is going 1-10 to kick off the pick 5. 1 time for the Paddock Bar crew. Reminds me of Grant. I think the statute of limitations is okay on this, Grant, so I'm going to tell the story. Several years ago, when he was one of my degenerate, for a few years in a row, I had a degenerate summer camp, more or less, where I would find someone fairly random during the week at Saratoga, where Susan always goes to West Virginia, and have basically some random DG sleep on my couch. One year it was Grant. I think he was about 19 years old. We went to a bar at which I was a familiar patron, and we got carded, no doubt, because of young Grant's face. And here I was thinking I was going to get kicked out of the bar, never welcome in again for bringing this underage guy. But he miraculously, there was a misprint on his ID. It said he was 21.
Stunning how that works out, isn't it? Shocking. Whenever it's ever happened, I go, how did that happen?
It's a very, very strange. One more
DMV.
Relevant to this race. Chris singled to the 3, taking a shot with the 7 and 10. Make some good cases for those runners. All right, we're underway here. Who do you? We'll quote Pete Aiello. Matt, who do you like here?
Well, I think Joel just he's stuck. He's got nowhere to go. He's got a ton of horse. If the 3 gets a seam, I think.
How about
this
10? How about this 10?
I think the 3
got the 3 got the seam.
3 just needed some daylight.
Yeah, I think the 3 is gonna. I mean, I don't want to jinx it, but looks to be home and hosed down.
This is the kind of trip that in my opinion anyway, maybe that's a little overzealous, but you're going to look at the final margin. It's going to say 2.5, maybe 3, almost something like that. In reality, I think it probably could have been 5 or 6 because he had 2 fistful of dynamite with 3/8 of a mile to go, and he had nowhere to go. Yep. I think those are the ones that watching tape, I think, is just as valuable as watching for the. I mean, I use the phrase that you have, I feel like, coined the international trip horse, where everybody and their brother sees the troubled piece. Well, when you see a win, I don't think some people anyway are as inclined to go back and watch how the win was earned. And in reality, I think that win could have been considerably more impressive than maybe the paper will suggest. And I know a lot of people are reluctant to take maiden winners last out against winners first time back. Keep in mind, these are 2-year-olds, so it probably doesn't really apply. But I'm never that terrified. I get it. It's a pretty significant class hike. And you got to take it all into consideration. What kind of field are they taking on first time winners? But if they do it impressively enough and the figs are relatively close, I'm not opposed to taking a shot. And again, this case may not actually work because we're talking about 2-year-olds. But this is a race that the paper will say 2.5, probably could have been 5.
And another point I'll make is I like it. A horse that was stuck in a vice like that in a turf sprint, I'm going to give extra credit to, because there's only so much room you have to make your final time, as opposed to you can weather a spot like that in a route, I think, and the final margin is going to be more in line with the ability. Whereas I feel like in a turf sprint, it could be, maybe some people would look at this the opposite way. But for me, I give more credit to the horse that had to idle in the turf sprint, because sometimes in a turf sprint, one little idle and your goose is cooked. So it was a very impressive performance, and obviously winning gear down in the end doesn't hurt either. I was too clever by half in that spot. Meanwhile, Matt Bernier, you're 2 for 2. You playing in any contest yourself? You might be looking okay at this point.
Yeah, I got into a feeder into tomorrow's $500 BCBC qualifier, and I also took a shot for over on Horse Tourneys. I have started qualifiers for Keeneland's fall event already, which I love. I love anytime you can start trying early rather than wait till the bitter end when there's that kind of onslaught of people trying to get in last minute. It's part of the reason I'm a big proponent of trying to get into the BCBC as soon as possible, not have to think about it as you get closer and closer. The same applies for an event like Keeneland's fall contest. So those are the 2 feeders I'm in today, just trying to kind of pick up a couple spots for pennies on the dollar, if you will.
There's some great contest action coming up. Labor Day weekend, if you're a contest player, that's when you want to circle on the calendar. So there was originally supposed to be this LRF Cares, speaking of aftercare, contest this weekend at Del Mar. There was some sort of problem related to the ADW or something. They've actually decided to push it out to Labor Day weekend. That's going to be Saturday. And then Sunday and Monday, you've got the Kentucky Downs contest. And these Kentucky Downs contests, you're going to want to pay attention. BCBC seats on the line. You can qualify in on Horse Tourneys. I'm not sure if those events are up yet, but they will be soon. And there's going to be an interconnected series to crown a turf champion in those events. Pay attention. Check it out. HorsePlayers.com. That's the place for all your NHC and BCBC qualifying needs. But to Matt's point, HorseTourneys.com, a chance to look ahead, see what's coming up, and start trying to get in for short money to some of these bigger events. And it's just, I just think it's the best, especially if you're a new player. The ability to control your cost, get action for a day. We're always proponents of firing through the windows, and we do. But especially for players looking to learn the game, contests, they're really great. And I still think, even though they're more appreciated, a little bit underappreciated.
Well, and to your point, I've had enough people bring up in the past, oh, I'm going to the track with X amount of dollars today, or whatever it may be. And without fail, if they end up, faltering early, they're going to the ATM, they're taking more cash out, and they've all of a sudden gone over whatever they had budgeted for the day. The beautiful thing about a contest is that's it. You bought in. You're in it for the duration, whether it's 6 races or 12 races. So I'm with you. I think it's a good way to kind of I think it does a few different things. If you do really think about it from trying to be very strict and playing to your budget, I think it's a very easy way to do that. You don't get anything too overzealous. You don't have to be somebody that's going to reload and keep firing. You already know that you bought in here this afternoon for $20. That's it. If 20 is your budget, 20 is your budget. You're in for the day. You have some fun. Try to pick some winners. At the very least, you'd like to think that you can glean some facts out of it, or some things that you can then use to your advantage going forward, whether it's in contests or playing with cash. I know some people, I think Tommy Massis has been the most vocal about it's very difficult to play both sides of the aisle, because it takes a different mentality doing one thing as opposed to another. I do understand that logic. I think, though, from a handicapping standpoint, I think it helps. I think one helps the other. I think playing in these $2 mythical kind of contests, it forces you to look for things that aren't obvious. It forces you to kind of read between the lines a little bit more so than maybe just, oh, well, the 2-to-1 favorite on paper, who's the fastest, who loves the trip, is going to work out the best situation. They're just the best. I think contests force you to kind of read between the lines, and I think that can be transferred to your day in and day out playing with cash.
It's a great description. JK described contests as, especially for, both JK and I don't mean to go back to the chalk thing with him, but he and let's just put it this way. Neither he nor I are afraid to get stuck into a short-priced horse. But when that's your mentality when you're starting out, one great thing that contest does is help you develop, and this is a JK term all the way, the muscle memory for what it's like to find a longer priced runner. And I think that's related very much to what you're talking about, Matt.
Oh, 100%. It's the thing, I've caught some flack in the past about taking some shots with some horses in races that, they look overmatched, and some of the more logical runners, they kind of look like they're standouts. And sometimes it ends up playing out that way, where the horse that I tried to make a case for, or I bet, or I picked, whether it's here or on TV or wherever, they're still running right now. But there are also those times where I've been able to uncover some big prices, and you always have to kind of go back to those times and say, you know what, I'm going to be wrong a lot in general, but there's a difference between being wrong a lot in general and just kind of eking out those 3-to-1 or 4-to-1 shots in the times that you're right. It's going to be kind of hard to get it back, and picking the 10 or 15-to-1 shots that are right those 3 or 4 times that you're right. That's how you end up in the black as opposed to in the red.
That makes perfect sense. A few more comments to get to. Grant does confirm that he's been 21 since he was 17. We appreciate that. Grant, we'd love to see you up here this summer. We've missed you. We've missed you for a minute. You got to get yourself back up to Saratoga, and we got to get you back on the In the Money Media Network. We'll take a break from the comments to take a look at our leaderboard right now, because we do have some separation after that second winner. Oh my goodness gracious. Look who is tied for first. Jason Avila, who folks will remember from the World HorsePlayer Tour, a concept that still has a chance to live, people. We're working on it. It's just in the background right now with everything going on in the world, this little bug going around and everything. But anyway, Jason Avila, you might remember as the guy who thought he won the race during our World HorsePlayers Tour show, who actually got snapped. One of my favorite moments in horse racing broadcasting. Sorry, Jason. Check that. If you want to see that, by the way, it's got a fantastic host. And the analysts you might get a little tired with, but a fantastic host.
Great host, Gabby Gaudet.
She was good too. World HorsePlayer Tour on YouTube. You'll see all you want of Jason Avila. He's in the top spot there with 23, along with Chris Couples, who we've been going back and forth with, CJ Arrigo, and Richard Flax currently in the top spots. Oh, good to see Jim Sebus there as well. Always enjoy texting back and forth with him, and then the rest of that crew in the big scrum in second place. All to play for here with 4 races left to go in our Saratoga Six Pack. But great to see an updated leaderboard. And I think I saw Howard Kravitz, who's also been active in the comments as well. We want you to be active in the comments, people. Chime in, like I said, whether it's just a shout out or whatever it is. We love to hear from you. Lenora says hello. We say hi back. Here's Chris. We just talked about him. He says, that's pretty funny. The aforementioned 13 Camaro LE1 was purchased with winnings from the Bar of Gold Amise Mesa Exactoid from the Breeders' Cup back in 2017. Joe Salido agrees with you, Matt. He wasn't a natural taker to contest, but realized that the fixed cost part made them a great thing. And then Chris again talking about the benefits of playing in the live event. So there's 2 kinds of contests. There's the pick and pray, like we're doing all the picks are in before, and then there are the live contests where you can change them around. And he says the live contest taught him to be more selective, and when you have a strong opinion, you got to make that opinion count. The $2 mythical 5-person pick and pray winner take all on HorsePlayers has become a staple of bankroll sport. So that's a really good point, Chris. I'm glad you brought up. There are other contests. The simplest format is a head-to-head. You and one other player. And I do think there's a lot of people out there. I know at a point in JK's career, he was using that as a bankroll building thing. You just play against one other player, and then these contests Chris is mentioning, it's just 5 players, so your strike rate is going to be a lot higher than when you're dealing with a big full field. and then you've got the winner take all aspect. It feels like if you can get a little bit of an edge in terms of having a good opinion or understanding the strategy, you could make a big impact on your bankroll.
Yeah, I mean, it's very much for anyone who used to play cards online or still does in some form or fashion. You know, the sit and go tournaments where you would sit down and there's only 6 people, or there's a head-to-head, just one-on-one kind of situation. It's very much in the same vein. I do think the strategy changes, and we've talked about it. The fewer people involved, maybe you get a little bit more bullish on taking more likely winners as opposed to, you know, a contest where you have 150 people like we have this afternoon. If you want to win, you probably need to think a little outside the box and take a shot on a couple of numbers that probability wise would suggest they're not necessarily the most likely winners. But if they do come in, you're going to have just some sort of a massive advantage. Doesn't mean you wouldn't play something like that in a smaller contest if you really love the horse, but maybe you start to get a little bit more selective and look for some chances that are more likely than not to hit, as opposed to some of the big bombers that we see, let's say on a weekly basis with some of these events, whether it's a BCBC qualifier or, you know, anything going on over at horse tourneys.
You get into real play who you like territory. Now, it's always play who you like in contests, especially live contests, but with what you're describing is exactly right. You don't need to get cute at all. Whereas in many contest formats, you've got to get at least a little bit cute. Howard has chimed in with a golf question for you, Matt. We talk golf on here. Playing Pebble Beach next weekend. Favorite hole on the course for you?
Oh, so I've never played Pebble, but from watching it enough, I mean, I do love I love a par 3 that I think it's like 110 yards that, depending on the wind, can either be playing, because it's all downhill as well, can either play 95, or if the wind is dead into off the ocean, off the Pacific, it can be like a 165, 170 yard hole, which those to me are the most interesting when you have to really start. It's the same as with a handicapping situation when you're going through a race and it's just very, I don't want to say boring, but it's very clear how the thing is going to play out. That to me isn't that exciting. It's kind of hard to really make, you know, lemonade out of lemons, however you want to say that. At least with something like that, a little par 3 on paper, doesn't look like much, but you catch it at the wrong time and it can all of a sudden turn into an absolute monster. Those are probably my favorites. 18, I don't mind, but it's certainly not my favorite. It is what it is. I was lucky enough to play Bethpage Black a few weeks ago when I was down there for the NBC show, those 2 weekends, or the Saturday, Sunday. I played the front 9 in an absolute deluge. And then I got to the back 9 and the sun came out and it was gorgeous. It was fantastic. But I've never been out to Pebble. That is certainly on the bucket list.
Not far from where I grew up, Bethpage. A Long Island guy myself. I'm from Port Washington, not far from Belmont Park, and all the golfing friends. For me, my speed is the little par 3 executive course over at Saratoga National. You might be able to twist my arm and get me out there, but that's about it.
Oh, well, tell me about this then, because we're going to have to make it happen. I've never played Saratoga National. I've never played, and I've had enough people who I know are proper golf folks who are deep into it. They've said it's one of the best. I actually have a buddy of mine at our golf course he's probably the best player I've ever played with that's not a professional, and he's originally from way upstate, almost like he went to St. Lawrence, so he's way out there. But he said Saratoga National, out of all the places he's played, not only is it one of the hardest, but it's his favorite. So whether it's Labor Day weekend, which is going to be a little bit more of a fun weekend than the weekend before. I will be up there Travers weekend, though, doing some work with ABR. I'm going to try to tote the bag along and get out to the National.
Yeah, Saratoga National, that's above my pay grade. But if I can hit a 7-iron off the tee, man, I'm good. So the executive course, much more my speed. All right, we got one more race left on this show. Probably be here for about 25 more minutes. Hit us up with your questions. I was going to pivot to looking at that race at Del Mar tomorrow. We were talking about, but we've got one more golf question to get to, and it seemed like you had something too before we do that. Tom wanted to know about are there really warning signs about the difficulty of Bethpage Black?
The black course has a sign just behind the first tee box. You got to walk down, and it's a proper warning sign. I have a picture of it. You're not gonna be able to see it, but It just says something along the lines of the black course is for extremely skilled golfers, yada, yada, yada. Doesn't mean that people don't go out there and hack it up and have a good time. But the thing that I was most surprised about that I've told people, and I don't want to turn this into a golf podcast, but the greens are incredibly flat. They're pacey. They're not overly fast, but they're not slow by any stretch. But they're really flat. And it made me think that I can see how the big boys, when they get out there, if they've got the putter going, that they could put up a number. The defense of that golf course, the distance, but if you're somebody who doesn't have a major issue with length, I'm not the longest hitter, but I'm certainly not short. The rough is a proper one-stroke penalty. You can't get it out of the rough. You got to pitch it out into the fairway and try to get up and down from there. But really, it's my favorite golf course. I've played a number of big-time courses, even around the world. I've played the old course. Bethpage Black is my favorite course I've ever played, and I got my brains bashed in.
Well, that tells you something. That definitely tells you something. Did you have a tangent or a piggyback before we move on to Del Mar for a minute?
Real quick, just from a handicapping standpoint, we talk about trying to get out ahead of the trend before everyone else does. I mean, are we at the point now where we mentioned the 2-year-old firster for Clement that won on Sunday? We had the 2-turn horse that won the first race that we were on here for today. We had the turf sprinter, first out of the box win. They're all 2-year-olds for Clement. I mean, is it time to start looking at any 2-year-old that Clement throws into a race and give them a look?
We may be over the top on that.
Yeah.
But I mean, I've been giving extra looks to his for 2 years. I mean, I just feel
like right now they are, not only are they running, but they're running big.
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, I think if it was a horse that I was going to like anyway, I'd probably feel pretty good about pressing a little bit more. But you get to there's a tipping point with this stuff where the man could send out a goat and it would be 9-2. You know what I mean? So you have to be cognizant of that. But I mean it's so it's one of those. It's not unlike the international bad trip horse concept we talked about before. Once everyone sees it, what I really want to find is one I can beat. I tried to be that guy in that spot, and he kicked sand in my face, and that's okay. If you're not passing winners, if you're not trying to beat winners, you're betting too many races, you're landing on too many favorites. So I'm not going to beat myself up about it. But it's one of those things where I don't want to be holding the bag either and have I don't want to run 4 figures in pick 6 through one that I really know nothing about or have no special edge on other than it's Clement. You know what I'm saying?
The toothpaste is out of the tube, if you will. Does that work?
It works very, very well. I've moved on to my next Whitman beer here. We got the Time is Money going on. We've moved on to their hoppy things. Do they call this an IPA or a hoppy pale ale? Either way, another delicious beer.
I've got to get there. I've never been.
It's good. It's good. Now, you're not much of a beer drinker, right?
No, I am now. Yeah, I mean, look, as I continue to get older, things have changed. I have a Bissell Brothers.
Bissell are great in Portland, Maine. Yeah.
Yep.
Love that place. Their sours and their hoppy beers are really good.
But yeah, I'm very much looking forward to whether it's the first weekend I'm up there or the second weekend, being able to go out and check out some of these spots.
We'll check it out. We'll come over here to the Brentwood. We'll have some cocktails. We'll make a double out of it for sure. But yeah, as I said that was a host fail thinking of 2015 Matt Bernier, because I've seen you drink like 100 beers on these HorsePlayer Happy Hour.
Many moons ago. Yeah, but I've changed as the years have gone on.
It's not all that Tennessee brand to not be named on a Maker's Mark sponsored podcast.
It's not that sweet stuff all the time.
All right, let's talk about Del Mar for a minute as we wait for other questions to come in and for this next race at Saratoga to come up. I think I'm gonna zip over there right after this. We've got 10 Strike Racing in the mix today. Clay Sanders in as well as Marshall Graham. They've got one in the next race. We'll talk about that. But let's take a minute here and talk about the Grade 2 Eddie Reed. This is a pretty live looking running of the Eddie Reed. Almost reminds me back in the days when this thing was a Grade 1.
Yeah, I mean, the most interesting thing to me about this running is, from a talent standpoint, this is certainly a Grade 1 caliber field. I think the distance is really going to be the X factor, because you have a horse in here like Smooth Like Straight, who, yes, he's run well at 1.125 miles, but I think he's probably at his best at a flat mile. You've got a horse like United, who he's coming off of a bit of a dud in the Charlie Whittingham out at 1.25 miles, but that's kind of his bread and butter. He's a longer distance type. 1.125 miles to me, although he's 2 for 2 at it, I think that's a little bit on the sharp side. And that's kind of why I gravitate toward the inner portions of the field. That's no disrespect to a horse like Award Winner or Restrained Vengeance or even Vintage Print. But I look at the 2 D'Amato horses and say the word and count again and feel like 1.125 miles, despite the fact that they are combined 0 for 2 at the distance, this to me is their game. I just wonder from a trip standpoint, is a horse like Count Again, who I think has as good a kick as any really in the country. I mean, he was finishing like a freight train in that Turf Classic against Colonel Liam in domestic spending, the cream of the crop as far as the older turf runners are concerned. Is he going to get enough pace to help set up that late kick? Because if he does, he's 5-1 on the morning line. Boy, that would be really, really appealing.
I think I'm going to side with Smooth Like Straight. I know what you're saying, that he didn't really visually see it out at Churchill Downs going 1.125 miles, but look who he was running against. I mean, those were beasts. Those are horses that would be favored in this spot. And then the other thing I like about Smooth Like Straight, I've been messing around with this Equine Edge program. We've got actually a kind of a fun deal with them going on. If you sign up, normally you get a free weekend, you get a free month if you use our code free money, or if you go to equineedge.com/free money. And on both his strength of race, so I'll back up and I'll say something that I like about Equine Edge. One of the reasons why I think you can get some good information, some good signal out of the program is it's much more class and breeding based than it is pace and speed based. And so much of what I do is pace and speed that bringing this in to like color in the rest of the picture is very useful. And both on their strength of race and genetic strength rating, the horse comes out pretty well. Maybe I'm also being a Michael McCarthy fanboy. I'm not going to rule that possibility out either. I do love the guy, but I think Smooth Like Straight is going to get a terrific trip. And I think that I understand questioning the 1.125 miles, but I think that effort is maybe a little bit better than it looks, given that it was domestic spending and Colonel Liam knocking heads for them that day.
Well, and I think more or less you and I are looking at it saying we want the horses from the Turf Classic, where, again, I think overall it was the best field that any of these horses has run against here in 2021. Count Again, unfortunately, is always going to be up against it from a tactical standpoint because he just doesn't have any early foot. When it comes to a turn of foot, I think his is as good. Well, it's not as good as domestic spending, but it's pretty damn good. But Smooth Like Straight, I agree with you. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying he ran poorly that day. I just think he's probably at his absolute peak at that flat mile. Now, with a tactical edge on the main foes, maybe that 1.125 miles isn't going to be such a big deal. Price-wise, I would probably side more toward if I could get something closer to that 5-1 with Count Again, just because I do believe in his talent. I think he is right there with, talent-wise anyway, a horse like Smooth Like Straight. But as we've talked about, that tactical edge, that really can be the difference maker.
Makes perfect sense. I think for me, United, a horse I've backed many, many times and supported many, many times, I just worry that it's going to be too sharp. I mean, Richard Mandela knows more than I do. Maybe we should just trust him, but I can't. I feel like for me, he might make the market for both of the runners we're talking about, and maybe messing around with both of them against him might be the way to go. And if United kicks sand in my face, so be it.
Look, I agree with you. I mean, he's the sort of horse that, again, if you're just someone who handicaps off the paper, you're going to see a horse who just wins races. He's never been out of the exact in 4 starts at Del Mar. He's 2 for 2 at 1.125 miles. If you're someone who watches tape, I think you're going to look at it and say, well, he doesn't have a brilliant turn of foot. He's got a good turn of foot, but it's not brilliant. And he's done his best out at 1.5 miles, at 1.25 miles.
He's a grinder. He's not a quickener.
I'm with you. He's a stayer, and that's the beautiful thing. I've actually, oddly enough, I've talked to Brittany Urton about this, about one of Peter Urton's horses, Storm the Court. Storm the Court, to me, if he had an opportunity at 1.5 miles, Storm the Court, by the way, a former Breeders' Cup winner.
That's right.
Get him out to 1.5 miles on grass. and just let him grind, because he doesn't have a turn of foot. He's not somebody that's just going to quicken and go. But I think he'll run as long as you card a race. And if you can combine that, I feel like he could be a United type who maybe he's not a 105 buyer. But I don't know that he's that far off if you gave him that opportunity to get out there and just stretch his legs, find that, I'm not a fan of the term cruising speed, but cruising speed. If he just gets out there and kind of keeps it
what
in
don't you like about cruising speed? I use cruising speed.
Well, I just think it's very generic. I think there's cruising speed to me implies that I'm trying to think
how
of the
fast
right way.
Can you go? I use it for how fast you can go comfortably, as opposed to when you're quickening. So like some horses just don't have any of it. They need a setup, and whereas some horses can travel along, keep themselves in touch, and then maybe kick, and then maybe would kick when they get it. But I don't know. Maybe it is too generic.
Well, no, because then I think of a horse like Tribhuvan, who won a Grade 1 this past weekend down at Monmouth Park. I don't look at him.
Good pick by you, by the way.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're not setting the world on fire with a 2-to-1 shot, but I mean,
fair enough.
I'm just happy that he is what I thought he was. But I don't look at him and think of cruising speed. I think he's just fast, and he still has a kick at the end. Whereas United, I think the cruising speed term, I think, is more appropriate. And maybe I just kind of conflate the two. I would call him a grinder as opposed to high cruising speed. I think he's just that he's even. He's not going to turn it on, and he also doesn't have the ability to go 45 to the half. He's just he is what he's going to clip off 24s, which is not
grinders. Grinders are a little different to me. Grinders are horses that they just keep finding. Like they can almost get to that like off the bridle point, and they're just going to still keep their head down, and they're not going to come off. They're just going to keep going and finding. And I think of a lot of Todd Pletcher runners on the dirt, but also there's plenty of turf horses that meet that description too. They're not gonna go boom like that from they're not gonna be third to first or whatever, but they're just gonna keep trying, and they're gonna keep getting up into the race, and they're gonna run through that wire. And there are certain race shapes that just favor horses like that, and they love distance.
My son, Opportunity.
There was a grinder.
Grindy as grindy gets.
We've only got a minute for the 7th race at Saratoga. Let's start off with Howard's comment. He's really interested in the 8 in this spot, even though lost last 2 by a whole lot of lengths. Fastest early, been in some quick paces, could get loose in a field where many don't pass. That's not a crazy notion to me. Not a crazy notion at all. What do you think in this spot, Matt?
No, look, I'm right there with him. And from a price standpoint, I think the 8 makes plenty of sense. I had sort of narrowed it down to the 6, the 8, and the 10. And I chose to go to the far outside with Chloe Rose. I think getting back to the main track is going to be much more suited for her. Second time going out for Bruce Brown's barn. Although the form of the race has been pretty dreadful, I feel like if she runs back to that Pimlico race on April 24th, I think that's better than anything anybody in here has shown they're capable of doing. And 4-to-1 for me from a price is, I think, fair. I wouldn't want to go much lower than that. But the 10, Chloe Rose is where I went.
I get it. I had my Alluring Lady, the 8 on top as well for very similar reasons as we've talked about. Coming out of some unusually fast paces, should be forwardly placed, if not loose in this spot. And then maybe I'll be a little bit of a 10-strike fanboy as well. I did like Quantitative Breezin' in this spot, just fitting on form and figures, and hopefully we'll be in a good spot for Manny Franco somewhere in the second flight and can attack coming home. I don't love 8-5, but I'll definitely have some 6-8 exactas as well and some 6-10s.
I know 10 strike, they have Dot Matrix going tomorrow, correct?
Yeah, Dot, one of the big horses. That was many years ago now when as a big price as a homebred for 10 strike got the win up here and still going strong all these years later. What a cool horse. I'm a big fan of that horse out of the 10 strike foundation mare, as it were, Aunt Dot. Really looking forward to hanging out with the 10 strike crew tonight, the rest of today and tonight. The great thing about the Brentwood, we're right here at the 7 furlong shoot. I'm going to I'm gonna see if I can like give somebody $10 and take me over in a golf cart. I'll be if we didn't have to wait till they were official to wrap up our show today, Matt. I might be able to be over there before it was official, and I'll try to hang out with that lot in the boxes if I don't get shot on sight trying to sneak in.
Hey, look, you've got enough juice up there. You're not going to get in trouble trying to sneak in. People know who you are. Come on now. Don't downplay it too much. Have you talked about or have you looked at rather the Lake George tomorrow?
I took a quick glance at it. Let's talk about it as they're going into the gate here. What did you have a fancy?
Yeah, there's a horse I really like in here. Now I don't know if she's going to be the price that she's listed on the morning line, and David Aragon is as good as anyone. But I still have a feeling that I think Manon is the goods, and I don't know how she finished where she did with the trip she had in the Wild Applause, because I wouldn't have faulted her if she finished 7th.
Yeah.
And she still somehow finished 2nd by a half length behind a good horse and Runaway Rumor, who's also in the spot. If she's anything near 6-1, it might be time to cut one out and send it in there for her, because I think she's really good.
I don't hate it. There's some interesting prices in this race. What about Invincible Gal to give another chance after getting no setup in that race where Navratilova won at Churchill? Has some good closing sectionals, and there's plenty of pace in here. I definitely like both of those runners. Manon will get the jump, but Invisible Gal could prove best late.
I think it's a really good group of 3-year-old fillies. I thought about Amy C long and hard. I feel like she's the unknown in here, and you have to look at it and say it's a positive that Arad stays aboard. I thought her turn of foot was really solid. I don't know if I love the field she ran against, but I thought she was pretty good in there. And, I mean, you can even make a case for a horse like Fluffy Socks, who was really good as a 2-year-old. She's not bad as a 3-year-old, but it doesn't feel like she's taken really that step forward just yet. I think you could go a few different ways in this race.
Very nice trip for quantitative breezing, if good enough.
Come on, Chloe.
Plenty of pace. Yeah, your Chloe Rose at 4-1, looking pretty good as well. Is this 9 Traffic Lane going to keep finding though, Matt, down there on the inside?
Making life a little bit more difficult.
I think you can get there. I think you got it.
Yeah, I think we got it, but yeah. it was a little Javier needed to persist.
Looks like it's going to come 10-7-9 there in the 7th race.
Hey, do we have to stop them 3 for 3? Let's just keep rolling. Keep the camera going. We're going to bankroll the whole week for this one right now. Let's keep going.
I think you're looking pretty good in your qualifiers, right? I mean, you've got to be okay.
Doing all right. Yeah, I was in 2nd in one of them and like 6th or 7th in the other, but I mean that should help. I think we're doing okay.
I never even mentioned we got 147 entries today, so a little bit down from last week, but I guess that makes sense. That was opening day. Mm-hmm. I'm definitely feeling these Thursdays up here. It would be a strain for me to do a live stream late on a Friday. It is nice to have like a head fake towards a weekend if I can wrap my work by midday Friday. And 147 certainly respectable, but we do want people to tell other people about these shows. We want to expand this community. We want to get more people talking. Remember, it's all, I get it. Like maybe you're thinking, oh, but I want the shot at the free 20,000. But it's like, sometimes you got to be more magnanimous than that and think about the big picture of life. And we're trying to do something fun, create a little sense of community. And the more we support ideas like this, the more we can convince partners like the Breeders' Cup to do great horse player friendly things like this. So tell your friends, let them get involved, and hopefully we're going to continue to have some fun and some big fields here with these HorsePlayer Happy Hours as we get on to the run up. I mean, it's amazing how it works, right? The summer meets end, and then we've got like a little break for Kentucky Downs taking center stage, and it's basically big run up to the Breeders' Cup.
Yeah, you get a little bit of a breath, and that's about it. It's just enough time to really, I think, do the full deep dive, the nuts and bolts that are required to go into the Breeders' Cup and feel as close to prepared as possible. It's an overwhelming 2 days just because there are so many horses coming from all around the world, and the races are all competitive and deep. And especially in a year like this, I feel, and no coincidence, this will be the second run through at Del Mar. We just had the second run through at Keeneland. You know, we don't have a ton of data for those two venues for the Breeders' Cup specifically. So I think that adds another added wrinkle to everything, trying to glean some kind of info, heads or tails. Going back to, I believe it was Chris who was talking about the Bar of Gold filly and mare sprint from Del Mar all those years ago, where she was 65-1 or whatever it was. It was the one race I didn't bet her, and she ended up winning and blowing up the tote board. But you have just enough time to take that breath following Saratoga, Del Mar. You got a little bit of Kentucky Downs. We'll have some good racing up north of the border at Woodbine. And then before you know it, we're into Keeneland, and then the Breeders' Cup is upon us.
It's great stuff. I misspoke before, by the way. This beer that I'm drinking, this Time is Money, it's I think it's like an oak-aged Helles is what it is. It's delicious.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was getting big hops off the nose, but it's like very integrated, very smooth. Another easy drinker. From our friends at Whitman Brewing. We thank them for their help today. We're going to thank our friends at the Brentwood too. It's been great fun hanging out here doing these shows with on the Saturdays. We're going to have you. I guess we'll get you for Labor Day when you're here.
Yes.
You'll be sitting right in the booth next to me, and we'll have a good time talking about all things Labor Day weekend, which is actually a really fun weekend to be here. And I think it'll be interesting with the change in calendar where we now have the Jockey Club Gold Cup.
And I could be wrong, I believe the Flower Bowl as well. So, I mean, I'm very much looking forward to, I think that weekend, and credit to Naira for recognizing that there needed to be an adjustment in the schedule. I think you needed to get that 1.25 mile race for the older horses earlier than later, just because of the way horses are campaigned and trained these days. If you want to have an opportunity, you've already got so many of the big barns up there at Saratoga. If you want to have the opportunity to get a proper 2-turn 10-furlong race into these horses and then give them, I guess it would be effectively 8 weeks off. That's your chance. So I'll be very curious. Forza D'Oro and the Whitney, it sounds like it's going to be an absolute crackerjack of a race. It sounds like Swiss Skydiver is going to go there, take on the boys. And if we see Maxfield in that spot and perhaps some of these other big names that we've seen. So I think it's going to be really fun sort of lead in through the remainder of the meet and into Breeders' Cup season.
We had a question about the Swiss Skydiver heading to the Whitney. You think she goes there with a chance?
Well, yeah. I mean, her best is probably, I would say her best is close. I don't know that I love the path that we've had to take to get there, and it's nobody's fault. But I know Kenny McPeak's barn had a little bit of a quarantine thing. They had to get through that situation. We didn't get to see her run in the Ogden Phipps because of the fever. I mean, it's been a little while since we've seen her. I'm going to assume she's going to be fresh as a daisy, ready to go. But with Maxfield in there, with a couple of these other big names, that sounds like Country Grammar could be going in there. She's going to have her work cut out for her. She's going to probably need the best race of her life.
Howard tends to agree. He does say she has a shot. But he likes the idea of an outside post for her. I get that. Do you think that's going to matter in your reckoning of that race?
To be honest with you, I think the thing that would be most important to me, and it depends on what the field ultimately looks like, I don't think you get cute. I think you have to be aggressive. Put the boots to the field. Go. Use her speed and say, if we're going to lose, we're going to go out with the best chance that we have at winning. I don't know that I want to start my run with Maxfield at 1.1 miles. I just don't, that doesn't really do anything for me. I want him to have to come and run me down. And I think she has enough early speed, if they use it, to get out to the front, set a legitimate pace that's not, otherworldly, and still have enough stamina, enough left in the tank as they hit the quarter pole to potentially hold them off.
Let's do a quick word, Matt, on race number 5 at Saratoga on Saturday. It's the Grade 1 CCA Oaks. It's just a field of 4 in this spot. Malathot making her return to the race. As it's kind of amazing that there isn't more in a prestigious Grade 1 like this, given how valuable it is to even run third. Not quite sure I can get my head around that one, but do you feel like Malathot is a free square in this race? I've been a big Clairiere fan for a long time. Felt like she was compromised the last day, chasing slow fractions. There is part of me that out of some sort of Clairiere loyalty might want to take a little shot against Malathot in this spot, as much as I respect her and the work that she's done in this division. Hasn't been seen since that Kentucky Oaks triumph.
I think not only is it surprising to me that you only got 4, but there's no speed. I mean, none of these fillies would you classify a front runner or a speed horse. So if I had a filly that was of even moderate ability, but was a confirmed kind of we need to go and set the fractions early on, I mean, I would have just taken a chance. And like you say, I mean, worst case scenario, you're going to get a check because there's only 5. Best case scenario, perhaps you pull off the upset of all upsets, and somewhere in between, you end up hanging around. You catch a piece, you're grade 1 placed, and you're made as a broodmare. Neither here nor there. I think she's really good. The numbers would suggest she's good, but not really good just yet. Granted, we haven't seen her since the last Friday in April, so maybe she takes a big step forward here with this time off. I know this has been the plan all along. The quote from the connections has still stuck with me. I don't believe it was Todd. I think it was somebody else involved with Shadwell who said, the year-end goal is the Breeders' Cup. It's just a matter of, is it going to be against the boys or the girls? I mean, they still continue, and we had talked about that idea. They kind of flirted with the idea of running in the Belmont. They are seemingly abundantly confident in what she's capable of. You have to win on Saturday in a 4-horse field. You can't lose that race, even though the pace can get a little bit funny in these shorter fields. But you also need to run faster, and that may not necessarily happen Saturday, given the unlikely scenario in which there is any kind of pace. I could see this being run kind of like a bunched up turf race, where all 4 of them, you throw a blanket on them, they go 49 in a piece for the opening half mile, and then they try to sprint, and she's just better. But at some point, she will need to take that step forward if we're really thinking distaff and or classic down the road. But I think she's way the horse to beat. It's a race that I'll take pleasure in watching.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Rock, paper, scissors finds herself in an awesome spot for our pals over at WinStar Stablemates as the one that with Saya's up, I would assume is just going to go. And while I would assume she's going to get run down, I'd also assume she's going to get a grade 1 placing. It's something, they don't come easy. There might be, I mean, hey, I don't want to jinx her and have her run for it. That could happen. There's a talented field around her, but she's going to have a tactical advantage, I would assume. And let's put it this way. They put themselves in a fantastic position. It's still got to work out. That's why they run the races. But they got to be feeling pretty smug on the eve of the race.
Well, I mean, and that's the only reason I bring that sort of thing up, because she's kind of case in point. Worst case scenario, it doesn't work out. You're still going to get a paycheck. Let's say she ends up running 4th. You're going to get paid.
A literal paid workout.
It's a paid workout. Yeah. Best case scenario, you pull off the upset of all upsets because you basically had the lead handed to you. And somewhere in between, you hit the board, you get a grade 1 placing, you're made as a broodmare. They can send her off to auction at the end of the year or next year. And she's going to probably get, even if she's the kind of horse that doesn't end up being something spectacular on the racetrack, she's always going to have that G1 placing. And that black type is more valuable than anybody can really put a figure on. So I'm surprised that you only got this many fillies to run in a race like this.
It's shocking. And you're not going to hear at the auction, oh, it was only a 4-horse field.
Yeah, right.
She was the only speed. No.
You're going to hear.
It's a grade 1 placing.
Yeah. She was grade 1 placed in the Coaching Club American Oaks at Saratoga. I mean, that's a spicy meatball right there.
Well put. Okay, let's do one last leaderboard update and then get the heck out of here. Craig, if they've given it to us, we'll live. Well, there we go. Chris Couples, who was with you on the 10 there, Matt, has now vaulted his way into first place with 39.10. Lee Van Winkle in second, 36.90. Don Marquardt, 36.90. Greg Lewis and James Costello in the same boat. Our leader, David Browning, in sixth, 32.30, ahead of a group that includes Peter Rotundo, Howard Johnson, Pat Quagliero, and then back behind that in the next positions that would currently be in the money. Of course, we got 3 races left, but we've got CJ Arrigo, Donald Wildermuth, Bob Weir, from whose house I've broadcast many times, including last week's HorsePlayer Happy Hour up there in the mix. Gary Lyons, Matt Kasowitz, and Sam Stinson. And we'll go ahead and give the tie for 16th as well, just so we can shout out Jason Avila one more time. And Richard Flax tied with him with $23 in 16th place. 3 races to play for, all to play for. And that's going to do it for this edition of the show, Matt. You got a final thought for us and the viewers as we wrap up this latest edition of the live stream, and we'll continue to follow along online at horseplayers.com.
No, I just think we've got a nice weekend of racing ahead of us. Again, we talked about the Eddie Reed. I think that is a grade 1 race through and through. We talk about sometimes you get, a grade 1 race, but it's a grade 2 field or that kind of thing. This is the complete opposite. This may only be a grade 2, but it's a grade 1 caliber field. I'm looking forward to that race. And we just talked about Mahalathat. I mean, I don't know that it's ever an advantageous position to be in. Yes, you want to be the favorite in a grade 1, but I don't know that it's ever advantageous for people to look at it and say, if you don't win, this is a disaster. I mean, this you need to win. I think the expectations and the pressure will be on everyone involved with this filly, and rightfully so, because she's really done nothing wrong throughout her career. Quite literally, she's a perfect 5 for 5. So really looking forward to this, and then we'll dive back into things next Thursday.
Sounds good to me, my friend. For Matt Bernier, we'll do some thank yous. Thanks to everybody. We'll start with the thanking of the viewers, especially those of you who made comments. Please come back next week. We'll be doing this again. We'll have a bit of a back and forth between Saratoga and Del Mar. That'll be a lot of fun. That's my first gut anyway on what we're going to do. I want to thank my friends here at the Brentwood, our friends at Walton Whitman Brewery for providing the beverages for tonight. We want to make sure we check out both of those fantastic Saratoga spots. Saratoga eating and drinking scene continuing to evolve, and you definitely want to check out the cool places. And Brentwood have a few nights left throughout the meet. They're largely booked up, but if you're looking for a night or two in Saratoga, holler over here and tell them we sent you, and hopefully you have a chance to get to stay at this really cool facility that could not be closer to the Saratoga grounds. Well, thank producer Craig. He definitely deserves a shout out. Always a pleasure working with him. And that's going to do it. This show's been a production of In the Money Media and the Breeders' Cup. Oh, we'll give a little shout out to Haley Amos over there on the Breeders' Cup side, and also Justin McDonald. Speaking of people who are so much fun to work with, our business manager is Drew Coatney. Our chief creative officer is Jonathan Kitchen. I'm Peter Thomas Fornatow. May you win all your photos.